right, welcome everyone to this very special episode of the Electric Wire podcast. I'm your host, Kristin Gilkes, and I'm the Executive Director of the Customers First Coalition, which is a coalition to preserve Wisconsin's affordable and reliable electricity. We've been bringing you the Electric Wire podcast as a way to stay informed on Wisconsin energy and utility news since February of 2020, and we thought it was time to take a look back on some of our favorite moments from the Electric Wire, the most powerful moments, if you will. It's only appropriate that I'm joined today by Matt Spencer of Madison Gas and Electric, who's been a frequent guest on the podcast. Welcome back, Spence.
Hey, Kristin, how are you? Thanks for having me again.
Thanks for joining us. And I also want to take a moment to say a special thank you to everyone who has joined our podcast over the past year and a half. We are only as strong as the guests and industry experts we bring on, and to each and every one of you who has joined us, thank you. It was a big task to pick the top 10 powerful moments on the Electric Wire, and I could come up with another episode with another top 10 easily. And I might do that sometime. Until then, just know that we appreciate every single one of your contributions. Now let's get to the countdown. Our first powerful moment and powerful moment number 10 on our countdown is from episode number 1, The Rise of Solar, on February 12th, 2020. I loved this clip of Heather Allen, who was a program manager for Renew at the time. She's now its executive director. And first of all, congrats to Heather, and we're happy to have her as a board member of Customers First Coalition in her role. And in this clip, Heather told the story of how she became interested in renewable energy. Here's the clip.
So tell us, you said you have solar on your rooftop.
I do.
What played into that decision? And if you saw something like solar clings or whatever, would you do more?
Oh, yeah. I actually want to learn how to play with it more. So I have a little shed, too. And it almost looks, the roof of my shed looks like there's a solar panel on it. So I kind of want to put a separate solar panel on it and attach it to a battery and figure out if I can charge my electric lawnmower from it and all these things. So I definitely want to do more and learn more about how to manage it myself.
You're all in on this.
Yeah, I became really fascinated. It's a fascinating, It's fascinating to kind of make your own power. So I think my house made me do it. I have a really tiny little house with a perfectly 45-degree angle roof facing south with, and the only trees in front of it are across the street. So you just look at my roof at any day of the week and it's bright, sunshine's bouncing off of it. And I just, I knew enough about solar panels to know that was a really good fit.
Spence, we heard you a little bit in that clip. What do you think? What sparked your interest in solar issues?
So for me, obviously, I started getting involved in energy policy simply because my boss, when I worked in the legislature, who was also on this podcast, this episode 1, was Representative Kuglich. So I didn't have a big background on solar issues or energy issues prior to that, but he was a reader. So I became a reader on all these issues and educated myself on solar issues, the energy policy in Wisconsin. And, when I started working at Madison Gas and Electric, you could just see this solar wave coming across the country and in Wisconsin in particular. It's a very interesting transition simply because, 8 years ago, this wasn't the case. Working for a company like Madison Gas and Electric, seeing their commitment to not only carbon reduction, but to providing a reliable energy source to its customers is interesting. And then, personally, we've become more energy efficient in our home. We talked about this last week, Kristin, but, just the thought of, my next vehicle may be an electric vehicle, which is something that just never even thought would be the case even 2 years ago. So
I know. And the reason I love this clip from Heather is it was so easy to visualize. And for me, that sort of crystallizing moment was when I bought an electric vehicle in 2017. And I had been interested in energy issues for a long time before that, probably a decade. But that sort of took it to the next level to me and just sort of added this passion behind the advocacy that we do. All right, we're moving on to powerful moment number 9. Powerful moment number 9 comes from episode 11, Regulation, Reliability, in Texas, from March 12th, 2021. And the devastating power outages in Texas last March led to a lot of discussion on the role of regulation in providing reliable power. On this podcast, we talked about weatherization of power infrastructure as a form of insurance against power outages. And we've pulled here a clip of Kira Lear of Perkins Coie discussing this further.
And Kristin, I think those kind of insurance type costs for that weatherization, I think consumers really are willing to pay those because they especially see what can happen if you don't have it. And in Wisconsin, we know it's going to get that cold. We know that we can expect this, and it would be weird for it not to get that cold. So we have to build into those costs on the front end in the construction. And the issue is customers get to pay for that over time. If they had to pay everything in one lump sum, it's almost no different than the $10,000 bills that they're getting right now for these costs. But in a regulated system, you get to amortize that and spread it out over a period of time. And then I think that helps make that less impactful in any given month.
All right, loved that clip and loved having Kira on. Kira is also a former board member of CFC. Spence, what are your thoughts? How does Texas keep getting this wrong, and what can Wisconsin do to prevent the situation that happened in Texas?
So in a regulated state like Wisconsin, Madison Gas and Electric is obviously regulated by the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin. Our customers are guaranteed to receive safe, reliable, and cost-effective energy, sustainable energy, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, regardless of how cold it is or how hot it is in the summer. And it's been, the past 3 weeks, it's been pretty warm here. In a deregulated state like Texas, power generators have no obligation to serve all their customers. Regulators are not charged with ensuring the reliability of the grid, nor managing, the costs for the customers. As a part of our compact with our regulators, utilities own and operate generation, and there are many requirements that provide reliability to all of our customers across the state. That includes specifications for generation, fail-safe design standards that ensure that our customers, if it's 95 degrees outside and everyone's got their air conditioners going, there's generation to back that up.
Thanks, Spence. All right, let's move on to powerful moment number 8. This clip is from episode 2, EV Road Trip, from February 26th, 2020. And when Deb Irwin was on the podcast, we had a pretty incredible panel, including Deb, Corey Singletary of Cub, and Debbie Branson of MG&E. And at the time, Deb was manager of regulatory policy at Xcel Energy, and now she's gotten a promotion to working on EV policy full-time, and her title is Director of Policy and Program Planning for Electric Transportation. Well-deserved, Deb. Here's a clip of Deb talking about bringing the benefits of EVs to all utility customers.
And then, the other thing that we're looking at is, how do we get people to charge at the times when electricity is the cheapest? And so, another part of our residential proposal focuses on charging off-peak primarily and giving customers the benefits of the lower costs of electricity to charge off-peak.
And that helps all customers as well, even those without EVs, when people are charging at the appropriate times.
It does. I mean, if you think about it, if you can have more customers using the same utility infrastructure, you're actually going to lower the cost for all customers. And so it really matters when people are charging, and trying to get people to charge, and use that infrastructure better is something that, is a good role, I think, for the utility to play.
Spence, you guys have talked a lot about bringing the benefits of EVs to all customers. And in this podcast, Debbie Branson from MG&E talked about your managed charging program. How's that going?
Things are going really well. Our customer satisfaction is, I would say, through the roof. We have our Charge at Home program. We have our managed charging program. Both allow customers to, charge at appropriate times. We don't necessarily want or need customers charging in the middle of the day, but if there's a possibility that we can help you as a customer charge overnight when energy prices are cheaper, it benefits you as a customer and it benefits the rest of the service territory as well.
That's a point that I've really tried to drive home here in my time at CFC as well, that when charging is properly managed for EVs and we're charging them at non-peak times, this can help utilize utility generation resources and ease pressure on the grid, and that can really help all utility customers when done correctly.
We've also started partnering with dealerships to make sure that they're notifying their customers that when they buy an EV of our Charge at Home program. And then we just launched a preferred EV dealership network in our service territory as well. So just making sure that when the customer knows, their dealership customer knows that when they leave a dealership, there's also this program with their local utility that they can take advantage of as well. It's important.
Yep. And as a driver, I know when I was at the dealership buying my first EV, I think I mentioned this on this EV road trip episode, but I was like, I can really just go home and charge this today. And it really can be that simple. There's just a cord that you can plug into your garage if you're not looking for super fast charging, and usually it just takes overnight. And the cars actually can all be programmed to only start charging when you tell it to. So there's a function within your electric vehicle, almost certainly, that if you don't want it to start charging until 11 p.m. because you're on a time of use rate or whatever, it won't start charging before you ask it to, even if you plug it in right away when you get home. All right, moving on to powerful moment number 7. This is another clip from episode 2, EV Road Trip, from February 26, 2020. And as you can tell, this is one of my favorite episodes. And I especially loved the conversation with EV Jane. Many of you remember Jane was a program manager at Renew at the time, and now she's leading Clean Fuels Michigan as their executive director. So congrats to Jane, and happy to see these women in power moving up the ranks. Let's play the clip now. This is me talking with Jane McCurry about the environmental benefits of electric vehicles. And I think it's really cool now that I can tell my daughter when we drive by a wind farm that is literally powering our vehicle. And it makes me feel good for future generations that as utilities transition their fleets to rely more heavily on renewables, the environmental benefits of electric vehicles will just keep getting better.
Yeah, I think that's a great point about the environmental benefits of an electric vehicle. It's the only car that you can drive that runs on renewable energy. And a gas engine can be really efficient, but the only thing that you can put into it is a fossil fuel. So if you're interested in renewable energy, an electric vehicle is really the only option.
And Jane goes on to say in this interview that even with the current fuel mix today in Wisconsin, EVs over their life cycle are responsible for only half of the emissions as gasoline-fired vehicles. And that's just today. That's not counting the future savings that will be achieved as utilities transition their fleet to renewables. Spence, does MG&E have anything exciting going on with EVs right now you wanted to mention?
We do. We recently started construction of our EV fast charger hub in downtown Madison. It's the first of its kind in Wisconsin. It's going to be located on East Washington Avenue. If you're familiar with downtown Madison, it's right near the Capitol. So there's 8 fast chargers and 8 Tesla superchargers that are going to be installed, and it's going to provide fast charging renewable powered by renewable energy for all the nearby apartment and condo dwellers, so single family households, commuters, taxi drivers, ride sharing services, fleet vehicles, what have you, in downtown Madison. It's a key to our carbon reduction goals for the company. And I mean, to say it one way is just, it's pretty cool, I guess. I would say it's pretty cool.
I'm really excited to charge there.
And it kind of goes back to what I said earlier. It's like with the new infrastructure coming in, places like this is going to, incentivize people to get an EV. I mean, as infrastructure is built out, there's going to be, you're going to see more and more of these cars on the road.
Very exciting. All right, let's move on to powerful moment number 6. This is from episode 3, Wisconsin's Energy Leaders, on March 13th, 2020. This was, I will note, the last episode we recorded in person before the pandemic shut everything down. We recorded it a few days before March 13th. Anyways, Bob Stone of the IBEW 2150 talks about the role energy plays in our everyday lives. This was one of my favorite all the power responses, maybe based on shock value alone. So let's play the clip and hear it.
So Bob, if you had all the power in the energy industry for a day, what would you do?
Yeah, I love that question. So my immediate...
It's fun to think about.
It really is. But my immediate thought is shut it off. Just shut it off. Because you can't do a whole lot in a day.
Uh-huh.
and really shutting it off is not a good answer. But what I mean by that is, get people's attention. So many people do not think about electricity until it's off, when a storm blows through, right? And it's off.
Yes.
So many people have ideas on where we should be today as it relates to this transition to a carbon-free electrical industry, generation being carbon-free. And I think that would get their attention.
You got my attention there.
Well, I loved that clip, and I think Bob makes a great point there about the value of the grid.
Yeah, I personally don't want to shut it off, professionally and personally, but I understand where he's coming from, because everyday person looks at a light switch and flip it on, and they just expect the power to come on. And luckily we live in Wisconsin, where we have this strong regulated market where every person's guaranteed that their lights are going to turn on. Your neighbor doesn't get better energy or different energy than you get. So I completely understand where he's coming from. Sometimes it's taken for granted, but I would say that we're lucky to live in a state where, it is guaranteed.
It's fascinating the way the whole system works. All right, we've got another powerful moment, honorable mention here. This is from episode 10, Coal Plant Closures and the Clean Energy Transition. It's another fun, all the power moment, like I said. So if there were a headline for this clip, it would be Scott Smith suggests locking everyone in a room during a global pandemic. I had to include it, but I'm only giving it an honorable mention. So I'm playing it now. All right, Scott, what would you do with all the power?
Well, thanks for asking. If I had all the power, what I would do is, looking back, what we talked about in this past hour, we talked about reliability, we talked about sustainable energy resources, and we talked about cost, right? I think everybody is in agreement that we want all of those things: safe, reliable, cost-effective, and sustainable energy. But I think sometimes people come at it from just a slightly different view. And oftentimes we get caught in kind of the judicial system fighting about these things. And I believe that you can get a better solution by everyone coming together, getting locked in a room, and trying to figure out where we have these common ground and where we can move forward with these things in terms of balancing all of these things. Because, as we talked about in Texas, they don't have reliability because they have those lower costs. All of these things kind of have to come into balance. And that's where I think, working with the customer groups that Tom represents, that Todd represents, working with the renewable developers that Dan represents, I think, there are some common solutions that we can reach. But I think we just need to talk about these things together.
So you want to use your power to lock everyone in a room?
Everyone's going to get locked
All right.
in.
Thank you, Scott.
Well, I think now we're able to be in a room again. So maybe.
Okay, but don't lock me in if I'm invited.
So yeah, I think he's on point now. Maybe not 6 months ago, but or however long ago it was, 3 months ago. But yeah, now we can be in a room together again, and as long as you're up to date on the vaxes, I think we're good to go. So
it's fun, and I included this because we like to have fun, and Scott Smith is a good sport, but also he makes a good point that the way to get things done is to talk about it, and to include a lot of stakeholders in those discussions. We are moving on to powerful moment number 5. This moment is from episode 6, Building Together, on October 2nd, 2020. I loved this episode, and I was honored to have Marge Anderson of Slipstream joining as a co-host. We interviewed Kathy Kuntz, who was at the time the acting director of the Dane County Office of Energy and Climate Change. Since then, she's been named director of that office, and she's doing a great job over there. And not to say that this podcast is a launching pad to all of these career promotions, but it does kind of seem that way. And Spence, I'm expecting big things from you since you've been on like 4 times. I love Kathy's approach because she's all about positive reinforcement and pragmatism. In this clip, she talks about the first net zero energy school building in Wisconsin receiving a Dane County Climate Champion Award.
We just launched what we're calling now the Climate Champions Program, which is a recognition program to recognize entities that have efficient buildings. The thing we've done in launching that is we actually broadened it. So we're also going to recognize entities that have electric vehicles in their fleets, who've done things around water or other issues, to really make it as broad and expansive as we can. But that's the kind of stuff we're working on right now.
Are there any leaders you've recognized already?
Well, so the entity I always like to call out is the Oregon School District just completed construction of Forest Edge Elementary, and that's the first net zero energy school in Wisconsin. So that's a school that's heated and cooled with a ground source heat pump. It has a significant solar array on its rooftop, some battery storage, and being net zero energy means that facility is projected to produce as much electricity as it will use on an annual basis. It's doing its own thing, and I think that's the first net zero energy school in the state. It's pretty exciting that that's here in Dane County, and really helping us think about what's possible in this realm.
I liked that clip from Kathy because, again, she helped us visualize what does the first net zero energy school look like. They're using geothermal, they're using solar panels, and I just think helping people understand how achievable these upgrades on new buildings can be is exciting. I think it's exciting, and I really appreciate everything Kathy's doing to educate in this area.
And in our service territory, we recently gained approval of a 8 megawatt solar array to be built in Madison that's going to provide solar energy to the city of Madison and the Madison Metropolitan School District under our Renewable Energy Rider program. We have a great partnership set up with the city and MMSD. It helps us this is helping us achieve our goals of net zero carbon by 2050, and it helps MMSD reach its goals and the city reach its goals as well. So, local governments are starting to move this way, school districts are starting to move this way, and we're happy to make these partnerships as a utility.
Very cool. Thanks, Matt. Moving on to powerful moment number 4. This powerful moment comes from episode 9, Utility Regulation and Protecting Customers, from January 25th, 2021. Commissioner Ellen Nowak joined us to talk about regulation of the state's utilities in another one of my absolute favorite episodes. Bill Malcolm of AARP also joined on this podcast, and he did a phenomenal job. I highly recommend checking this one out. The first clip here, Ellen discusses rates and retail choice. In the second clip, Ellen is talking about real-time market pricing for new load, where the Commission has set up programs to make sure large customers have access to market rates for new load. She talks here about protecting all customers in these programs. And most importantly, she uses a pie analogy, which we're leaning into here on this podcast.
And there's so many things that go into why rates are what they are. You know, I think maybe there's this disillusion that, well, we go to retail choice, then poof, the prices automatically fall. That ignores all the different factors, even global factors that go into why prices are what they are. So we've structured those in a way, though, where it's not hurting the residential customers in that way. That was really important to us, is trying to keep the cost causation closer to the classes that are impacted by this. And again, keeping the load in the area is hugely important to all classes, because unfortunately we've seen too many cases where a large energy user leaves an area and that pie is still the same size, and the pie meaning the costs, and now it just everyone has to eat more pie, and not everyone really wants to eat more pie, and they can't afford to. So
I always want to eat more pie.
I do want to eat more pie, especially
the problem I've been having during the pandemic.
Pumpkin pie too, but we can't say we all can afford to eat more pie. Our waistlines can afford to eat more pie.
You know, first of all, I'm always a fan of more pie. I'm not a cake person. I love pie. So
I'm glad I'm not the only one.
Yeah. But when it comes to rates and everything, like all customers within different service classes have to be treated the same way in the regulated model in Wisconsin. You know, the way that rates are set, it's all publicly noticed, it's all publicly made aware. The commissioners do it in daylight. And I think that's a very transparent model of setting rates in Wisconsin. It's fair, and it ensures that every customer is treated the exact same way. You know, like I said earlier, your neighbor isn't getting a different rate. Your residential neighbor is not getting a different rate than you are.
Thanks, Spence. All right, let's move on to powerful moment number 3. This moment comes from episode 3, Wisconsin's Energy Leaders, from March 13th, 2020. We'll have 2 clips we'll play here. We were honored to have both PSC Chairperson Rebecca Vach and Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes join us on this episode. They both used some of their time to emphasize the importance of hearing from many points of view as we work on energy and climate issues. And I'm going to play clips from each of them now. The voice you'll hear asking the question of Lieutenant Governor Barnes was Bob Stone from the IBEW 2150 again, as he was co-hosting that episode.
Can you tell us more about your role as the head of the Climate Change Task Force and what you're hoping that the task force might accomplish?
Yes, I'm very excited that the governor has chosen me to lead the Climate Change Task Force. Like I said, it's been a passion of mine for some time. It's where we can see some very significant movement and also impact every community positively across Wisconsin. And in chairing this task force, we want to be sure that we brought people on board from many different backgrounds, different professions, different levels of experience, because it was important for us to make sure that that table wasn't missing people. And it was important for us also to get people in the room who don't always agree, or people in the room who won't always have an opportunity to engage in conversation with each other. And I think that is one of the most important things about it, because so often people talk over or around each other. And in many instances, people have the same ideas, the same goals and passions, but don't know each other and are spending a lot of time recreating the wheel. And we want to do the best that we can to avoid that. And we are tasked with making sure that the state is on track to meet our 2050 clean energy goal. And it's one that, given the people who are on this task force, given the level of experience that we have, I think that the 2050 is a goal that we can beat. I think we have every tool at our disposal to make that happen. You have some people who are committed to seeing that, and we got a number of utilities on board who've committed, or who've made stronger commitments than the state had made in previous instances. So this is a time for us to be very excited. I'm really excited about the membership, and I'm even more excited about the work that we're about to engage in.
And then shortly after I started, we issued the notice for the EV, the generic docket. And Commissioner Nowak started that docket while she was chair. And then when I took over as chair in March, we started going, and we got comments from so many different parts of the industry. And then we hosted a workshop. And for me, that was one of the most exciting things that we did, because we've never done that before. So we actually invited different parties who had commented on the docket. We said, come to the commission, and the docket coordinator, Joe Fontaine, actually chose and selected the tables where everybody would sit in an effort to get a really good cross-section of opinions. And that led to a lot of great discussion.
I thought so too. I was there. He did a really good job organizing.
He did. And I love that sort of pre-planning of, I'm going to put a person from this particular industry, I'm going to seat them next to this person. It's kind of like planning a wedding. You want to keep all the fun aunts and uncles together.
Spence, it's interesting to listen back to that, to early 2020. As we said earlier, this was our last in-person recording before the pandemic shut everything down. But it's interesting to listen back as the work on the climate change task force was just beginning. The task force actually issued recommendations in late 2020, which seems like a really long time ago at this point.
Yeah, we didn't participate. We kind of participated from the sidelines. We shared some comments on the task force. So Madison Gas and Electric issued a 2050 goal, and then shortly after that, Governor Evers issued a similar goal, carbon reduction, net zero carbon by 2050 as well. As a utility industry, we're happy to lead on this, and there's other sectors that we're looking at. Obviously electrifying now, just the transportation sector. We're working with the state right now to set up its state clean energy plan. And electrification is a huge aspect of that.
Okay, we are moving on to powerful moment number 2. This is from episode 4, Shooting the Breeze, on August 13th, 2020. This was Brian Rood's swan song episode as he was about to retire, and he did a really good job of both describing his role on the Customers First Coalition board as well as the history of CFC through the years as he was passing the torch to Jennifer Schilling. And then later in the clip, Jennifer outlined some of her thoughts on the purpose of CFC moving forward. I can't believe it's already been almost a year since Brian retired from Dairyland Power Cooperative, and we've been honored to have Jen Schilling bringing her perspective to CFC as a member of our board representing Dairyland Power Cooperative ever since. This clip is a little longer, but hang in there because we've only got one powerful moment left.
But there were a number of folks in the industry, a unique combination really, municipal electrics, cooperative electrics, and one investor-owned utility, Madison Gas and Electric, that said, we're not ready to buy into this is going to be good for consumers. And so we came together as a coalition to stop Wisconsin from moving too quickly down that route. And it was a great thing because, of course, California imploded, Enron imploded, and all of a sudden everybody realized that deregulation did have major and significant flaws. And over time, we've seen more states re-regulate than we have continued the path towards deregulation. And the problem is with deregulation, there are winners with deregulation, but they're generally large industrial customers, and there are losers, and they're generally residential and agriculture. So like for Dairyland, it was very easy to oppose deregulation because as a system, we're 85% residential and agricultural. Then having lived through that battle, we began to realize that we had a lot in common. And we added the IBEW, the labor union that represents most utilities in Wisconsin, Renew Wisconsin, Citizens Utility Board, had all come in over that deregulation fight. And what we found is by getting together monthly, we could debate and discuss electric utility issues, and generally our group could find consensus. And if we could find consensus, that generally meant that the legislature and or the commission could find consensus. So we've continued that effort. At the core, we're still worried about deregulation and the impacts it would have on residential and agricultural consumers, but we've been able to partner in ways that have really, I think, benefited all of our institutions and the ratepayers in Wisconsin. And we sort of have an uneasy truce with the investor-owned utilities and others who aren't members. They understand where we come from, and they understand that we do try to seek consensus the way I would say, Jen would say, the way the political system used to seek consensus as well.
Well, Brian, again, thank you so much for your leadership through the years. And Jen, we're excited to have you on the board moving forward. Do you have thoughts on the direction that we can go as the Customers First Coalition, and do you see a role for us?
Yeah, for sure. I think what is so attractive is that those allies and the members, the partnership that you have, that we have at Customers First. I mean, it is a diverse group that all have an interest in safe, reliable power and electricity throughout the state. So it's a mix of municipalities, of investor-owned, of the co-ops, of labor, the state association for the co-ops. And so it really is a lot of voices that, and I think legislatively from a policy standpoint, policymakers appreciate when the groups can kind of work out the details on big issues, complicated issues, and then present a unified voice to the legislature on reforms or new ideas and legislation. And so I think Customers First provides a very stable, pragmatic, thoughtful approach to how we deal with energy here, energy policy in Wisconsin moving forward. I think all of those things are really needed at a time when there seems to be a paralysis of partisanship and in what we see day to day sometimes, and to have a long range, thoughtful plan that groups can come together. And yes, we're going to maybe disagree on some of the nitty gritty details. We all know kind of the roles that we play. But I think Customers First is that outlet, no pun intended, of having a strategic, thoughtful, collaborative way to approach these complicated issues and look for a way to do it in a balanced approach.
Well, it was great to hear from Brian Root again in that clip, and to hear from Jen Schilling, our current board representative from Dairyland Power Cooperative as well. I always like hearing the history of CFC and sort of like getting it on the record so that we can always go back to that. Even as some of the sort of like industry stalwarts retire, we've got that history recorded. All right, we are moving on to powerful moment number 1. This is what we chose as the number 1 most powerful moment from the electric wire over the course of time. It is from episode 1, The Rise of Solar. We really hit our prime early there, I guess. This is from February 12th, 2020. And Spence, I was honored to have you as a co-host for our first episode of The Electric Wire. I'm not admitting to anything right here, but we may have had a beverage to calm the nerves before we recorded our first episode. But we had such rock stars on this first episode with us, including Jeff Ripp of Alliant Energy, Heather Allen of Renew Wisconsin, who we heard a clip from already, and Representative Mike Kuglich, who is the chairman of the Assembly Energy and Utilities Committee. And it was at the end of our interview with Representative Kuglich when you, Spence, helped us settle on the question of what would you do with all the power at the end of interviews with each guest. I also really appreciated Representative Kuglich's response on reliability and innovation. Have a listen now.
if you were king for the day, or since this is an energy podcast, if you had all the power, what would you do with it?
I love that. If you had all the power, I think we may need to go with that from now on.
Well, that's kind of shocking.
There we
go.
That was good.
So, if I was king for the day, or had all the power, and I could wave my magic wand in the energy sector, what would it be? I think I would look at reliability. Well, we looked at the kind of the mantra of safe, reliable, and affordable. So I would look at reliability, and then I'd look at innovation. If you look at the history of our country, it's been driven on innovation. And I think if you look at what solar and wind have done over the last decade, they've become more efficient. The costs have dropped by 88%. So we're going in the right direction, innovation there. Now, but when you look at the reliability part, as we all know that it's not always sunny and it's not always windy. So we need innovation to step in. And we've been hearing about battery backup and storage for years. So we need to make sure that we continue down that road and that we develop efficient and cost-effective battery storage, so then we can make sure that we touch on that affordability piece.
So that was taped in February of 2020, correct?
Yes.
And since then, since we started the year, Madison Gas and Electric, in partnership with WEC Energy, has announced multiple solar facilities with battery storage. So innovation does happen quick. I mean, think about, I said it earlier, but
you delivered.
Yeah, it's there. So, I mean, I don't think people thought that we would have utility scale solar this fast in Wisconsin, and to transition already from utility scale solar with battery storage is, that's innovation. That it's moving forward very quickly. And we're happy with the partnership that we have with WEC Energy. And to his point, the reliability is important. These battery storage helps us get to our goals. Obviously, new technologies are going to continue to advance the utility market and the energy market in Wisconsin and across the country. And as a company, we have to be innovative, and we feel like we're doing that. Since the start of the year, we've announced the Paris Solar Battery Park, the Darien Solar Energy Center, and then the Red Barn wind facility in Grant County. And these projects are going to power thousands of homes in the Madison Gas and Electric service territory, more across the state, because we're going to be owning 10% of each project. But it's a fast and fun world in the energy sector right now.
It is. And we didn't get to it in this recap episode, but we did do an episode 5 of The Electric Wire was titled Storage Space, and Tom Content from Cub was co-hosting that with me. He brought up excellent points about how storage can help utility customers save money as well. So I highly recommend, if you have an interest in storage issues, go back and check that one out as well. So thank you, everyone, for joining us on this trip down memory lane. Thank you, Spence, for co-hosting.
Absolutely. Thank you for thanks for letting me join you once again. I really appreciate it.
It was great. And I also, like I said before, appreciate so much everybody who has contributed to the Electric Wire along the way. I want to thank again the members of the Customers First Coalition for your continued support. Our members are Dairyland Power Cooperative, Madison Gas and Electric, the Municipal Electric Utilities of Wisconsin, WPPI Energy, Renew Wisconsin, the Citizens Utility Board, the IBEW 2150, and the Wisconsin Electric Cooperative Association. Thanks everyone for listening. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter at The Electric Wire, and we'll see you back again in July.